Good morning. Welcome back to another vlog. Today we're going to be hitting arms. We're going to be talking programming. We're going to be asking if you need an arm day and how to specifically design your split in order to be tailored to your physique, attacking weak points and genuinely building a proportional classic physique. We're also going to be taking you through some supplements and a bit of a day in the life. So I've had meal one, we've had our Digest Max, which I talked about in the previous video, which is going to help us just to digest everything to the max. Now it is time for our supplements. Once a week I divide all my supplements into day and night tablets so that I can just take them conveniently every morning, every evening, when I remember. But I'm going to run you through briefly what I use for health at the moment. It appears that we have somebody else interested in my stack. A few words to the camera. Tell you what, that guy is roaming around our garden every single morning trying to frantically figure out where the hell he buried his nuts. So if you, like myself and that squirrel, have a hard time finding your nuts, fear not, because you can get that nutrition elsewhere. And today we're going to talk about that through my supplement stack. So we've had a bit of an Amazon delivery. How do I do my supplements? Some of them I order online. I use Insight Subs just because all the prices are pretty much of a muchness. So you may as well just be consistent with who you go to, get those reward points, all that kind of stuff. And I know the discount codes. So, you know, that's why I use them. But in terms of brands, I'm agnostic. There's a few brands that I would say to use if you want to make sure that the formulas are trusted. You don't really need to look into them too much. That's Supplement Needs by Dean St. Mart's. Trained by JP. There is Revive, who is a little bit more expensive, but also very high quality. And those are, to be honest, my three. The rest of the stuff you can get pretty generically. So in terms of, first of all, a basal level of supplements, what should everyone be taking? Enhanced, natural. First of all, it's pretty obvious, right? Multivitamins. This has almost never changed in my stack. I always use Nutravita because they work out as the best cost and they're convenient because they're from Amazon. Now the second supplement that you're going to be looking to take is omega-3s. Now personally I don't take 369 because you can get omega-6 and omega-9 pretty readily through diet. Omega-3s is what we tend to be lacking in. And also for an enhanced athlete you're going to want to care about HDL because HDL is probably going to be about as low as the chances of that squirrel getting on a ride at Alton Towers. In terms of tackling HDL, I super dose omega-3s. I take about 6,000 milligrams a day. Particularly for me, HDL is low, and especially when I'm running Masteron right now, you know, a few compounds in terms of anabolics specifically fuck your lipids up, including Masteron and orals and a few others. So be conscious, increase your dose as needed, but you can just start off with, say, 3,000 milligrams, you'd be absolutely fine. So those are the two real basal supplements that I say that everyone should take, just to make sure you're not deficient in anything, and because they're pretty much the most consistently, you know, science-backed and relevant. Of course, creatine's in there. That comes in later in the pre-workout. 5 grams of creatine per day. There's no reason not to take it. It's pretty much the only performance-related supplement that's got science backing, so you may as well take that as well. Use what you can as a natty. Now onto the stuff that's going to support my cycle and your cycle if you're going enhanced. Trained by JP Vital Support. Now the reason why I like this in particular is because it has astragalus in it. Astragalus can be quite expensive to obtain, and as an all-in-one supplement, this is pretty damn good. It's got TUDCA, astragalus, NAC, IP6, and pine bark extract. So this is going to do a job pretty much for most of your organs, for your kidney, for your heart, for your liver. It's going to do a little bit for everything. It's not going to be comprehensive, and that's why you need to make sure that you get a blood test done to assess where you need to add in additional supplementation for support. Of course, not everything can be supplemented out of, but it can help. So astragalus I particularly like because kidneys and blood pressure are a particular concern of mine, as they should be for anyone on cycle. Another thing that I would consider using and highly recommend is something like Love Heart trained by JP. Something which is specifically for the heart, because again, the heart and the kidneys are pretty much the two that you really want to worry about on cycle, outside of stuff like blood pressure and stuff, but they're just sort of signs of the issues with those things. The heart and the kidneys are going to be the things that could potentially be fatal for you. So for me, yes, it's £40 a month per supplement, for example, but it's worth it because the cost of not doing anything with regards to those organs is monumental. Now, you don't have to go for something that's like 40, 50 quid, like a Love Heart. You can go for something like on Amazon, they've got Cardio Defense by Swiss Bioenergetics, which is something I used for a long time. And that's also going to have some great things like ubiquinol, which are going to help to support your heart. However, if you want something comprehensive, you're better off going for a specific bodybuilding supplement. Now, before I implemented Vital Support, I also used a Strag Flow, and I highly recommend this too. It's got astragalus beetroot extract, hawthorn berry, and goldenrod. And this is for kidneys and blood pressure. This is also a really good supplement and another good choice. Now, moving over into pharmaceutical support. For everybody out there who uses anabolics, telmisartan, use it. It's an ARB, angiotensin receptor blocker. I think that's what it's called. These basically just help to modulate blood pressure, pretty organ protective, and they have a lot of benefits, ARBs. Now, granted, they can have drawbacks. All pharmaceuticals have drawbacks. Most supplements have drawbacks. However, they outweigh the negatives. And telmisartan is a well-studied ARB with a 24-hour half-life, which means you have to take it once a day, which makes it easy. I personally take 40 milligrams. And then, specifically for the bulkers out there, we've got metformin. I use 500 once a day in the evening with my GH dose. And that's about it. We are going to head off. We're going to get a haircut. I'm going to hit arms. We're going to talk a little bit about training arms. Then we're going to talk a bit about programming. I'm going to take you through how I program for myself. And hopefully it'll be a fun day. Arm day is always a good one. It's something which I deem myself to specifically need. And chances are you might also. So stick around to find out why. En route to go train arms and get a haircut. Haircut's the first point of call, hence why we're wearing the pump cover. Because I overheat in anything above 5 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. You can do the conversion, but that's the problem with being a bodybuilder. I always thought it would be great being bigger, right? Get all the perks, you look intimidating. It is not worth the amount that I sweat. Honestly, I feel like a fucking gremlin half the time. In fact, last time that I went to get my haircut, I soaked through their chair. Hence why we're wearing the pump cover today, just to protect their shop. I'm not sure they'll let me in if I do it again. We have obtained our trim. Do I pass as an influencer now? That's the last thing I want to do, to be honest. Last thing you want to be is the guy at Christmas where they're like, so what are you doing for a living now, Sam? I'm an influencer. Great. It kind of kills the conversation, doesn't it? Now, I say I'm a bodybuilder, like, might be a bit of stolen valor, but let's face it, amateur is still a bodybuilder, and I still got more muscles than the average man. So when it comes to talking to Nan and Grandad about what you do, influencer ain't the way, bodybuilder is definitely the way I identify. And if I identify that way, then that's what I am. We are heading to the gym for an arm training day. First of all, I'm going to refuel slightly because getting the haircut took a little bit longer than expected. But the big question for today is, do you need a dedicated arm day? Short answer, yes. Long answer, yeah, most probably. There's a caveat to everything. It's all about proportions and whether or not you're genetically gifted in the arm department, which if you're a Caucasian male, chances are you're not. You're not going to have those big, muscly, bubbly, round muscle bellies that a lot of other people can walk into genetically, unfortunately. Sure, you might be one of those bros who trained arms every day when you're younger, but if that's the case, then obviously you do not need an arm day. You need to step the fuck off, build a chest and a back and a proportional V-taper physique. But for a lot of white guys out there, we ain't gonna have the arms that we need in order to look truly classic off the bat. It's gonna take time, training, frequency and intensity, and tagging it onto the end of a pull day or a push day just ain't gonna do the job. So, of course, when you first start out training, you gotta have more of a general split, you know, work out what genetically you respond well to, what body parts in particular are strong for you, and then work out where you need to go from there to build a proportional physique. But odds are you're gonna need to throw an arm day into the mix after a while, right? Just to ensure that, for example, if you're looking to compete in classic, you can hang with the big guys, you have that standout body part that screams golden era, the judges are gonna wanna see. So I'm very much in favor of arm days. You do have to train them differently. You're not gonna go for balls to the wall 3-rep sets like you are on legs, and nevertheless, just it's a different style of training. I mean, it's any less important or doesn't warrant its own day. So if you don't currently have an arm day in your split, and they are not superhumanly strong, and you're not got Nick Walker vibes, get yourself an arm day in that split. And later, I'll tell you how to program it so it doesn't take away from the other training. Of course, you have to worry about rest, recovery, whether or not you can recover in time for, say, your push days. Once again, you don't want fatigued arms when you're going into heavy presses, but don't worry, I've got you covered. But for the meantime, let's grab some foods, hit the gym, and show you how to train them in the first place.
That's ISO. Rack it up, I got a bit of the bank to make me a safe house.
So as I mentioned, arm training is slightly different to other days of the week or other body parts in that, for example, we're not really looking to overload via strength. We're more so looking to get as much blood into the muscle as possible, fatigue it more through volume. Of course, intensity plays a factor. I'm not going to go for like super long rep sets. We're not going for like 20 plus reps on any sets here. You know, I'm still absolutely looking to get the best bang for my buck in terms of hypertrophy out the session. We're going to kick off with some cable curls for biceps. The main reason I like doing this is because we can get a full range of motion. There's constant tension throughout the movement with the cables. Cables, in my opinion, are pretty much the best thing that you can utilize for arms. There is, of course, a case for everything, you know, especially when it comes to trying to figure out compound movements for arms, such as a close grip bench press, which is going to be very effective at loading the triceps. However, as a personal preference, and you'll figure this out for yourself, cables, in my opinion, are just the best, and they're going to form the vast majority of our arm training. That includes, of course, machines which utilize a cable system. So we're going to kick off first of all with cable curls. As I mentioned, warm the biceps up. Now, as with every warm-up, we're only literally going to stimulate them as much as possible, prepare them for the second exercise, which typically is my stronger compound lift, which will probably be some barbell curls. Now, in terms of how you set this up, it's completely up to you. You can either run through biceps, then run straight into triceps, or you can superset, do bicep movement, tricep movement, just to ensure that no one body part fatigues too soon. Now, another thing with arm training is that I tend to prefer to stick to a select few movements which engage for me the best. Everyone's different, but I find that arms is especially selective in terms of what movements are going to work best for you, that you're going to engage with the most. And I find that mind muscle connection, you know, pump and real focus and intensity are going to be keys in order to stimulating growth. And I find that a lot of our movements are kind of suboptimal for me. A lot of movements, for example, are just repeating other movements that produce a similar result, basically. If you're going to do two movements which are almost identical, what's the point in changing, setting up? If one movement feels good, just keep running with that. I see a lot of people who do a push down, then a reverse push down, then they'll grab a rope and they'll do a push down. And it's just like, well, could you find just one of those three movements which works best for you and just run with that through a whole workout? Personally, I'd rather do a whole workout with two movements that feel the best for me, because with arms, you've got a lot less variables. You're not talking about the chest, for example, where you have the upper, lower chest, you know, in different parts of it in order to target, or the back where you've got lats, you've got your erectors, you've got traps, you know, lots of things to consider that mean that exercise variety is key. When it comes to arms, just biceps and triceps, right? Yes, you have different heads to them, but unless you're training with abysmal form, you're probably going to be able to target both of them within any one workout. So without further ado, let's see if we can get a sick pump.
I got some gas, some packs, I'm up in the greenhouse. Ball it up, I'm with the game. We taking shots off the rebound. My posters say now, I've been humble too long, yeah. Tell them all to stay calm, yeah. Tell them all to move on, yeah. My posters say now, they be lost in the sauce, yeah. Took a loss, that's your loss, yeah. Had to get my point across, yeah. Heard them lanes was talking now that we don't pay that no mind. Didn't need to watch them know that I'll be there in no time. Put a candle on it, had to tell them they could blow mine. Lights, camera, action, hey, shows, smoking that dope from Edmond. We the new meth in Redmond. We ain't real blood, but we brethren. Run up a check and it's pending. She talking my news, we'll send them. The fam, you a dead man. Jesus, peace on my pendant. And we still independent. ISO, yeah, we trending. Watch what you say, don't offend them. They keeping it real, they commend them. People like get your wife pregnant, but I ain't trying to be dependent. I need money, never ending. I'm talking 100%. I need the owner, you run it. Whoa. Step in the spotty and watch how they panic. Yeah, we the duo, you know we dynamic. When we outside, we be stopping the traffic. Breaking their necks, them they upset. How them boys doing more when they got less? How they on this and how they on that? How they got this and yeah, how they got that? Too busy watching us, they need to stop that. Talking my
So we've increased the weight from a warm-up weight. We're now at about 12.5 kilos in the cables. Maximum will probably go here is about 14, 15 kilos, which is about another peg down on the machine. Generally the way that I tend to do things is straight sets. We keep the weight the same for the top sets, and I'm quite simply going until I reach the minimal of my rep range that I'm looking for. So for example, I might be aiming for 2 to 3 sets for a cable bicep curl, one warm-up, maybe 10 reps, a couple of feeder sets, and then we're going straight into the top set weight, say 14 kilos. I'll be aiming for between 10 to 15 reps on this. First set we might get 15, second set maybe we'll get 12, third set maybe we get 10. But once we hit that 10, we know that next set's going to be dipping below, so there's no point continuing on that. Give myself some rest, I'll move over to tricep movement or bicep movement. We're still reaching failure, it's just that progressive overload might happen more session to session. I'm not necessarily looking to do a top set back off because there's not really the same need to maximize hypertrophy, because I tend to go for a slightly higher rep range when it comes to arms. As I've mentioned, we're not focusing on strength, focusing on volume, so we're not lacking in hypertrophy, we don't need to do a back off set. So what's the point? We'll just do straight sets in terms of top sets. So in this, I'll quickly also give you a tutorial on setting these up, because arm positioning is really important. You can accidentally fall into a drag curl when it comes to doing cable curls. If you want to perform a drag curl, go and perform a fucking drag curl. Don't try and do a cable curl. So first of all, we're reaching down. You're just going to want to loosen up, especially if you've got a larger back. You're going to want to make sure that your shoulder blades are slightly retracted in order to isolate the biceps and not try and swing the weight with your back of your shoulders. And then once you pull it forward, I also like to just pull my elbows into my sides in front of my lats, because otherwise, if they're behind, you can see there, it ends up being a drag curl. So pull my biceps forward, and that also helps to isolate and put pretty much all the pressure onto those biceps. Then we're going to go down, and then pull your elbows forward slightly into the top of the movement in order to get the most contraction at the peak. It doesn't matter too much if your elbows move slightly on this. Some people are very strict in terms of their form. You should allow yourself a certain amount of flexibility in order to get the best possible range of motion and contraction. Now, a close grip bench is going to be one of the very few compound movements that you can actually do for arms. You know, the others being dips, whether that's assisted, weighted, body weight, whatever the case. And I guess you can classify a barbell curl as a compound. It's not really. And also dumbbells and cables are often more optimal than a barbell curl. But a close grip bench, I find, is one of the few ways that you can really overload the triceps in a controlled manner on a Smith machine. Smith machine gives you the safety. I like to take about a couple of minutes before I actually launch into it to make sure the bench position is exactly right. Do it without any load on the bar. Do a full range of motion of the exercise and make sure that as you go down, as you go up, you mainly feel it within the triceps. You're not getting any form of loading or awkward angles in the shoulders. You want to be coming in closer. So for me, that's about as close as I can go with my lats to enable a full range of motion. So that's about as close as I press. Some people will be able to go closer when you don't have quite as much muscle development. Some people will have to do it further apart. But luckily, because the triceps work more in an outwards way rather than sort of straight way, you know, in terms of loading them and in terms of obviously the outer heads, you're going to get more engagement from doing it with a slight bend at the elbow and a slight bend outward with the arms. It's not too much of a worry exactly how close you can get it or exactly how perfectly straight you can get your arms. Don't worry about that too much, okay? You want to bear in mind safety as well as how you're loading it and engagement. So a lot of people care too much about how perfectly they can get a movement. For example, like, okay, I'm trying to load the triceps, so I want as little outward movement of the arms as possible. But they forget about safety and about the amount you can load, right? So if you compromise, say 5-10% in terms of the form or the angle of your arms, which then enables you to put another 20% of load on the bar, or enables it to be safer so that you reduce your injury percentage by a substantial amount, then in my opinion, that's a good trade-off. And that's something you've got to judge, right? If you're care so much about form, is it then impacting your progress? This is something that people don't consider. You know, there's a trade-off to be had, so you've got to decide what's worth it for you. Personally, I prefer to compromise slightly on form, enable myself to progress more, and also get a better safety profile of the exercise, because I train alone. I don't want to take any risks, right? It might be easier if you've got a spotter, but a spotter can't help you with a tricep or a bicep tear. Facts.
Came for my wins, I need my ends. This life is real, if they pretend. Came off the bench, I get it in, I get it in, I get it in. Came for my wins, I need my ends. This life is real, if they pretend. Came off the bench, I get it in, I get it in, I get it in. I'm on my job, I get it done, but you should know that. Shine like a sun of 101, you should know that. I get the front and in the back, you should know that. No need to stun, it's never cap, you should know that. All I know, 10 toes, never fold, bang roll, on the go, ice wall, ice wall, ice wall. Came for my wins, I need my ends. This life is real, if they pretend. Came off the bench, I get it in, I get it in, I get it in. Came for my wins, I need my ends. This life is real, if they pretend. Came off the bench, I get it in, I get it in, I get it in. I miss my baby, so I hit them on the FaceTime. I need it all for them, so no, I cannot waste time. Facing these oceans, feel the water on my waistline. We trust the process and my only know it take time. You can get it, got no worries, I'm gon' make mine. Going global, I'ma get it out the state lines. Paying taxes at a more than what you make now. Different bracket, eating off a different plate now. For my wins, I need my ends. This life is real, if they pretend. Came off the bench, I get it in, I get it in, I get it in. For my wins, I need my ends. This life is real, if they pretend. Came off the bench, I get it in, I get it in, I get it in.
So, we are back from the gym. Got our post-workout. So the meals today have been, meal 1 was 100 grams of cream of rice, 50 grams of whey, 25 grams of nut butter. For meal 2, 4 slices of high protein bread, some chicken, and I believe that was about it, really. Fairly simple. Just made a couple of sandwiches, you know, old school. Then meal 3, we had to grab something slightly after the haircut. So we ended up having a sort of pasta, pre-bought things, bag of crisps, and some lemonade. So this was, again, you know, a demonstration of sometimes when you fall behind. For example, we woke up at 10 o'clock today. You have to get stuff on the go, finding choices that work. All of the sandwiches or all of the other pasta bowls were really high in fat, so we had to find something which was under like 15 grams of fat. Found something, it's more expensive, but we take the hit, right? So that was today's meals, and then we had an intra, 60 grams of carbs, 15 grams of EAAs, and on top of that, we then just had about 120 grams of rice, dry whey, and 100 grams cooked chicken breast. We'll have another rice dish, and then probably to finish off the day, we'll have some cream of rice and protein again. We front loaded a decent amount of fat just because we had to get some quick food in, quick, easy calories during the day. So that's where we are. But now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about programming. I mentioned before about the necessity of arm days, whether or not they're something that you should have in your routine. And I expressed the fact that I think that a lot of people could benefit from an arm day. But how do you go about then, once you're past the point of just needing generic lifting routines, you know, like a push-pull legs, a bro split, you want to then look to tailor them? Well, you don't necessarily need to go too far outside of those parameters in order to build a tailored program. There is a little bit in terms of exercise selection within the workouts, but for the moment we're going to talk about how do I go about making my split. Well, first of all, we look at the current physique. Where are we? So we have our weak body parts. We know roughly what our weaknesses are. You can do this with your own physique and identify maybe 2 or 3 body parts that specifically need to come up. If you can identify more than 2 or 3 weak body parts, well, you're pretty much naming all of them, so you can go ahead and have a proportional workout. If not, you want to then focus on your available working days over the week. So how much rest do you want to have, first of all? And I always recommend a minimum of 2 days of rest throughout the week. I like personally to do 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. This for me allows me to recover when I feel most exhausted, which is after a leg day. So push-pull legs is the first 3 days. That allows me to then rest, recuperate. I've had 3 days on the trot. I'm going to be pretty fucking knackered. And then we only come back for 2 days. So it's a shorter burst because we're going to be more fatigued towards the end of the week. and then we get a rest day. So we want to really ideally focus that second day on something which is going to be more of an output day, higher output day, right? Because you want to time your rest days after your highest exertion days. And then we go back for 3 days. So because of the fact that we've only worked out for 2 days in a row, then we've got another rest and we have a rest day before it, we're going to be pretty damn rested going into the next week. So the minimum that I recommend, as I said, is 2 days of rest per week. That leaves us with 5 days over the week. How do we want to structure that? Well, personally, I still want to grow all of my body. So I will still incorporate a push-pull legs for the first part. I don't recommend completely backing off strong body parts. I think they still need development. They still need to come up, you know, even if it's just slower in line with the rest of the physique. However, you just need to make sure that the growth of the other body parts that are weaker is accelerated. Within the push day, we will favour the shoulders more because we've identified that shoulders are a weak body part, specifically the rear delts. Within the leg day, we will target hamstrings more so. Maybe we'll only throw one hamstring exercise into the pull day because it's right before legs and you don't want to be exhausting your hamstrings then going into heavy deadlifts or squats the next day for a leg day and hampering your progress on leg day just for the sake of getting an extra couple of sets of hamstrings in the day before, because we still have 2 days to work with, remember, after the rest day post legs. So we've done that. We've slightly tweaked the exercise selection within those first 3 days. Then we have 2 days to work with. Now you could do an upper lower if you were proportional. That's a good way to do it. However, we've assessed that I'm not proportional. So where do we want to increase frequency that we haven't already increased frequency? Well, the shoulders aren't lagging to the point where they need their own dedicated day. Sure, I could tag them onto something, but I don't believe they're the main priority. The main priority for me is back, hamstrings and arms. So there are 2 days to pick from. We could do back and biceps, then hamstrings. Or we could do arms and then back and hamstrings. Now, personally, I find that arms, once you're fatigued from a workout, you don't get the same kind of engagement, the same kind of pump, the same kind of exhaustion, the same kind of capability to grow as when you have a dedicated day. And also because of the fact that you're not necessarily going to get your tricep work and bicep work in there, and enough anyway to exhibit maximum hypertrophy. After doing back, that's going to be a hell of a long session, right? So personally, I rather do arms than back and hamstrings. Or vice versa, this could work the other way. However, we're just coming off the back of a leg day, so I prefer to allow another day of separation before we hit hamstrings again. And back, of course, because we're loading the back often through stuff like a hack squat. So the split now looks like push, pull, legs, rest, arms, posterior, which is back and hamstrings, rest. Then we want to look to exercise selection. So, you know, what you're going to select within that workout. As I mentioned before, I like to position my weaker body part movements at the front of the workout, or near the front anyway, as the first compound, so that we're not pre-exhausting beforehand. I like to have the most amount of strength possible in order to encourage progression. And then if, you know, my strength output possibility is slightly lower on my bench press because I've done shoulders, well, it's not really that big of a deal, right? Because my chest is dominant and my shoulders aren't. So my shoulders need to come up, so why not put them in the optimal place in order to have the best possible performance? Now, if your chest and shoulders were lagging, then you might choose to do something like a high incline Smith, which is able to target both of them first of all and exhaust them both. However, for me, I'd put a shoulder press in there before I do my bench. I also throw in a couple more sets of lateral raises, and I might include another rear delt exercise within that workout. Then moving on to pull, maybe we just put one set of lying hamstring curls towards the end when we're already fatigued slightly, and maybe we switch up a barbell row for an RDL or a rack pull. And then when you're going into those 2 days, those 3 days that you've created, you know, the arm day and the posterior day, you're going to want to be thinking about what exercises you haven't utilized and what specific part of that body part you're trying to target. So earlier on in the week when we have our pull day, we know that lats the main priority. So the main focus of that back training is going to be the lats. So when it comes to the posterior, and when you're thinking about working the posterior chain, you're going to want to focus more on the mid backs, the traps, the erectors, and the hamstrings, you know, the middle column of the back, which still absolutely does need to come up and be developed. Well, for me then, that suggests first of all that the first compound movement should be some deadlift variation, and we should look at, say, closer grip back exercises which aren't going to fatigue the lats as much, where we can focus on the contraction of the mid back. Quite simply, all you're doing is you're working out how throughout the week you can target those weak body parts at least twice over the course of the week. You can have at least 2 sessions which fatigue those body parts with enough time to recover in between, and choosing your exercise selection so that you're maybe partitioning your body parts a bit more throughout the week as you're getting more advanced with your training. So, pull days become more lat days, and lat, hamstrings and biceps, and then your posterior days becomes more traps and erectors and hamstrings, so you're partitioning each body part. It may be the case, for example, that you choose to have 2 push days. Maybe one day you focus more on the upper chest and the shoulders, the other day you focus more on the mid-lower chest, and you focus on, say, the front, and then you focus on, say, the rear delts, the part that's less fatigued from the earlier movements. This is what you have to do when you get more advanced. You have to get much, much, much more specific. And this is also where specific movements like unilateral movements and the weird pull downs that you see everyone doing in the gym without cause come into play. Before then, when you have a more proportional physique, or where you're not able to accurately judge where your weak points are because you don't yet have enough muscle mass to be able to see where your genetic propensity to add mass falls, you want to do more compound movements, especially when you're a beginner. You want to learn the basics. You want to get really fucking good at them, like a barbell row and a deadlift and a flat bench or an incline bench, whatever the case. You just want to focus on those movements. As you get more advanced, then you realize that a compound movement that targets the whole area isn't really what's going to be optimal for you. Where you have the most strength and the most possibility for output, you want to be focusing that on your weakest body parts. And you're able to, as you grow mass, be more specific about where your weaknesses fall. So, is it the clavicles? Is it, for example, the upper mid chest? So in summary, towards the start of your fitness journey, I would encourage you to be a master of generality. Become a master of everything, and then once you can then assess over an even proportional body split over the week, what muscle parts grow more than others, what muscle parts respond better, where your genetic strength lies, you add more muscle, then you want to get more specific. Think of it like military training. You start off simply becoming a member of, say, the Royal Navy. Then, as time goes on, you decide your specialism. You would then decide, I would like to be an engineer. And then you go into the engineering ranks. And then once you've served some time after you've done basic training, then done your engineer's training, you would then decide what you're going to subspecialize in. Are you going to be a weapons engineer? Are you going to be a engineer of engines? Now, all of this kind of stuff comes further along the line, and then once you've achieved enough in order to be successful in that area, then you get more responsibility of more serious aspects, like, for example, going to work on new weapons development and all that kind of stuff. So you really have to think about it like a career, like obtaining skills in generality before then you can subspecialize, because you really have to know about the full ecosystem of training before you get into the nitty-gritty. But that's just my take on it, my take on building a split for your physique. You have to look at pictures on a weekly, monthly basis to assess where you're growing well, where you're not, where you need to maybe change things up, add more frequency, or even reduce frequency. YouTube isn't my friend at the minute. Quite simply, the algo is not on our side. It's favoring shorts because everyone want to be the new TikTok. So as much as you can do to support, like, share, comment, subscribe, please click the bell. The bell was the important bit, not the subscribing bit. So if you do subscribe, please just click it. And then, yeah, hopefully we can, continue to grow this tribe over the next year, 2 years. As life develops, we get to travel the world and bring you new and exciting content. We'll be bringing educational content back. This is not the death of the educational side of the channel, only a brief break and an integration of some new and interesting stuff. So please do leave a comment and a like to support the channel, and I will see you in the next one.